my YouTube channel Coding Gigs. So let's continue with the C++ programming language series. So today we are going to study about nested if, variations of for loop, scope of variables in for loop, while loop, conditional statements, what are increment and decrement operator. So before starting with this video, I would like to request all of you to please subscribe to my YouTube channel and please stay tuned with my YouTube channel because I'll be uploading all the interesting topics related to C++ content. So without wasting any time, let's move to the first topic of this lecture. So the first topic is nested if. So what is the definition of nested if? Nested if means we can put another if-else statement inside an if. This is the simple statement or simple definition of nested if. Nested means putting something inside another something container. Okay, so if you see on my screen, here you can see some syntax is written of if statement, right? So if you carefully look or observe, there is a if condition over here. Inside if block, you will see another block of if-else statement. So this is called as nested if. Now, if contains an expression which is a condition which has been described in the form of an expression. Okay, suppose if this expression 1, I'm assuming that this is true, then only you will move inside this block of if statement and then you will be executing the following conditions. Okay, so let's say that expression 1 is considered to be true. You come inside this block, you will again check another if statement. Okay, suppose this if expression of this if statement, second if statement is also true, then this statement will be evaluated. Otherwise, you are going to evaluate the else part. Whatever the code is written in the else block, that will be evaluated. So this is a simple example. I'll be explaining with the help of example also. But this is the simple definition as well as explanation of nested if, how the process goes on. So first, the if statement expression 1 will be evaluated. If it is true, then only you will come inside this block. Otherwise, you are not going to execute any of the statements. Okay. So now let's say if I code this example with the help of an example, how will it look like? Let's say I have example. Let's say I take an age variable. I take the value of age from the user. Okay. So now let's say a user has given me some value of an age. Okay, I will evaluate one expression that if age is greater than or equal to 18, what you're going to do? You're going to check another expression. Let's say I also ask about the experience also from the user experience. Okay. So cn experience. Okay. So let's say your experience is greater than or equal to 2. Okay, if the experience of that particular person is greater than or equal to 2, you're going to evaluate this statement. Let's say we are going to print that yes, you can drive. Okay, so this is a simple example. Otherwise, no, you need experience. Else, you should be above 80 as well as you also require some experience. Okay. So let's evaluate this statement. Let's see what we are going to get an output. Okay. So let's say if I say the age is 20 and the experience is 3. First statement has been evaluated. Why? Because age is actually greater than or equal to 18. That means you are evaluating the first expression 1 as true. You move inside this block of if statement. Another if statement check you're going to go evaluate, that is experience. Experience is given as 3. So 3 is greater than or equal to 2. Expression 2 is also evaluated as true. That's why you're getting this output. Otherwise, you could have got this output. Or else, if your age is not greater than or equal to 18, which means this evaluation is false, then you will directly get this following statement on your screen. So this is an example of nested if, right? So we have seen nested if, right? So now let's see the example. As I've seen, I've just coded this problem right now on the compiler. So if age is greater than or equal to 18, you're going to execute this block of statements, else you are going to move on to the this block of following statement, right? So now variations of for loop. Okay. Now what are the variations of for loop? In the previous videos, we have studied about loops, right? While loop, for loop, do while loop. So we are going to study about the variations of for loop. Like whenever we write for loop, we need to evaluate three expressions. You remember? First expression is the initialization. Second is the updation. Second is the condition. And third is the updation. Right. So these are the three expressions that needs to be evaluated. Now, writing this three expression also has some kind of variations in for loop. So the first one is, suppose the initialization part is moved outside the for loop. Okay, so what will be the output? Like, why do we use this part? So initialization part is removed from the for loop. Will this code work? We are going to see on the screen. And why do we require this thing? That is also we are going to see shortly. So let's say I remove this part. You'll get all this piece of code in the comment section or in the description box. So please don't worry regarding that. Just try to code along with me so that you can understand each of the part working of each syntax very easily. Okay. So yeah, as I was discussing, the general form of writing the for loop is like this, right? Int I is equals to 0. You specify some condition, let's say less than 10, and then the updation part. Okay. And you just print the following. So this is, you're getting the answer as 0 till 8 or 0 to 9. Okay. So this is the actual syntax of for loop, and I'm talking about the initialization part being removed. Okay. What will happen if I remove the initialization part outside the for loop? What will happen? Int I is equals to 0. You're going to get the same output as before, right? Before also you got this output only. Afterwards also you're getting this output. Then what is the reason? Why do we require writing this form initialization part outside the for loop? Why? Because you can access the value of I even if the for loop is been terminated. The last value of I, when your I becomes 10, you're not getting the value of I over here, right? Because your for loop has been terminated. Now suppose if you want to access the value of I after the termination of for loop, you can still access, because this is a separate topic. The reason behind this is a separate topic which we will discuss in the scope of variables part. So just remember that you can still access the value of I. Let's see whether we can actually access or not. Yeah. So this part is after the loop, for loop. After for loop. After for loop, the value of I was 10, but your I less than or less than the condition was I was less than 10. That's why this expression did not give you the evaluation answer as 10. That's why your I is accessible here, right? So this is one of the variations of for loop, that is the initialization part is removed. And why do we remove this initialization part? That also I have discussed the reason behind it right now. Okay. So next is variations of for loop. Okay, so what is the variation of for loop when the updation part is removed? Now you could not remove the condition part. It could be anything, like whenever you are writing a while loop, or let's say do while loop or for loop, you need to specify the condition inside the parenthesis. Otherwise, this any of the loop is not going to work. So this variation is used for two things. First is the initialization part is removed. Second is the updation part is removed. So we are going to look on to the updation part being removed. Okay. So let's say your updation part is removed from this parenthesis and you're keeping it inside the for loop after some line of code. Okay. So why do we do this? And will this work or not? That also we are going to see now. Okay. So I will move this value of I initialization part inside and I will remove this part and over here. Will this work? Let's see. Okay, I'm getting an error because I forgot to write a semicolon. Okay, another error. Why another error? Yeah. So I've put the value of initialization part inside the for loop. That's why. Now it will work. Yes. So you're getting the same output again. Nothing changes. Now, why do we require putting this updation part inside the for loop? Why? Why is that? What is the reason behind it? So there comes a case when you want to do something like, let's say, a conditional statement you need to check, and after checking that particular condition, then only you want to increment. Otherwise, you don't want to increment. Okay. So I can give an example. Suppose the value of I has been printed. Okay. Now updation will only be done if the value of I is even. Otherwise, simply increment it by 1. Okay. So if my value of I modulo 2 is equal to 0, that means if your I value is even, then what you do? You increment it by plus 2. Okay. Or else simply do I plus plus. So what output are we going to get? 02468. Now let's look on to the working of this particular code. See, first the value of I was 0. 0 is less than 10. Condition 2. You come inside, value of I which is 0 got printed on the screen. Next you will check the evaluation part, if part. Okay, so 0 modulo 2 is equal to 0. Right? That is why I is equal to I plus 2, which means anything if you divide it by 0, you're going to get 0 only. So this evaluation part got true. You came inside this if statement, you updated the value of I by 2. Okay. So 0 plus 2 is 2. That's why you will go here and you will print this part. Okay. I value got printed again. So you're getting the value of I as 2 now. Then you will check if 2 modulo 2 is equal to 0 or not. Yes, it is true. That is why I is equals to 2 plus 2. That means value of I will be 4 now, and so on. So this is the working of this loop. Okay. So that is why this is one of the case, or you can say, yeah, one of the possibility of putting the value of updation part inside the for loop like this, which means that updation part is removed from this for loop and you're moving it inside this for loop. Okay, over here. So this is the updation part. So this also variation of for loop is also done. Okay, now we are going to check about variations of for loop. Another one. Now see, we have covered up till now. What all things we have covered up? First is the nested if. We have seen the example of nested if. What is the definition of nested if? Next, we saw about variations of for loop where the initialization part was removed. What was the reason behind it? That also we saw because of the accessing the value of I, even if the term for loop is been terminated. Next is the updation part is removed. Okay, so that is also done. Now next is we can initialize multiple variables having multiple conditions and multiple update statement inside a for loop. So this is also another possibility of writing a for loop. Only we need to keep in mind that whenever we are specifying multiple statements, each multiple statements must be separated with the help of comma. You can see over here int I is equals to 0, you separate it with the help of comma. You specify another variable, initialize it with j is equal to 4. then a semicolon, this particular statement is done, you move on to the conditional statement. Then after that, updation statement is also separated with the help of comma. Note one thing, that whenever you are specifying these two conditions, this cannot be separated with the help of comma. In order to use it, you need to combine it with a logical operator. Okay, so that is what I have written in this statement, that we can initialize multiple variables having multiple conditions and multiple update statements inside a for loop. Right? This is the third possibility of variations of for loop. We can separate multiple statements using comma, but not for conditions. Okay, not for conditions. We cannot separate it with the help of comma. For that, you need to combine it with the logical operator. Now let's see the actual code. Okay, writing it in the compiler. Let's write it in the compiler, and let's see whether it works or not. This variation is true or not. So int I is equals to 0. I separate it with another comma. J is equals to 4. Okay, I is less than you can say I is less than 10. Okay, not 10. I'll take it a shorter value, which is 5, and your J is also less than 5. Okay, separated with a semicolon, I plus plus comma J minus minus. Okay, C out, value of I separated with some space, then value of J and L. Okay, let's see whether it works or not. Yes, it does. So first I is 0. Okay, so 0 is less than 5. J is 4. J is initialized to 4. 4 is less than 5. Right. So I value of I got printed. So 0 and 4 got printed. Okay. Then I got incremented to 1. Right. And J got decremented to 3. Same condition got evaluated again, and so on. So this is the process working, or you can say, yeah, the working of this code. Okay. So this is also done. Right. So now let's move on to the scope of variables. Okay. So what is a scope of variables? So as I was talking in the previous lectures of this part, right? Variations of for loop. Why do we need initialization part to be removed outside the for loop? So the reason I explained was the scope of variables, which we are going to discuss now. Now, what does scope of variables mean? Whenever you write some kind of variables inside a particular block of, let's say, a curly braces has been defined. Okay, inside that, if you specify any of the value of the variable, let's say I is equals to 0. Now, within that curly braces, value of I is equals to 0 is known. Outside that curly braces, compiler is not aware about the value of I. That is called a scope of variables. So the scope of any particular variable is limited in a curly braces wherever we define it. Okay, outside the brackets, these variables are not recognized by the compiler. So this applies to all loops and conditional statements. Okay, so conditional statements, that is if statements, if else statements, right? So suppose I have displayed one example over here. You take a for loop. There is an initialization statement, test expression, and update statement as usual. Here you define a variable, let's say a scope of variable I. Okay, so outside this for loop, you cannot access the value of I or J. In order to access it, you use it outside the for loop. So here comes another topic, which is called as local variables and global variables. Local variables is something which is accessible within the specified where you have defined it. Only that much part you can access it. And global variables means you can access that particular variable any part of the lines of code. How many lines of code you have written, any part you can access it. Okay, so this is an example. Let's say the value of I is 0, 0, I is less than 5, I plus plus. Inside this, you declare a variable. Let's say int j is equals to 2. Okay, so scope of I and j both are inside this loop. They can't be used outside. So now if you try to access this j outside the loop, you cannot access. If you try to access the value of I outside the loop, you cannot access. Compiler is going to give you an error. Let's check whatever I've said till now, it is correct or not. Okay. So take this example only. So 0, I and j values are only accessible till this much part. If I try to access the value of I and j outside the loop, will I be able to access or not? Let's check. Obviously not, you're going to get an error. Compiler is going to give you an error. Compilation failed. Why? Because I was not declared in this scope. Over here, I is not declared. Similarly, J is also not declared in this scope. So this is called as local scope. Only here you can get or access the value of I and J, not here. If you want to access, you need to define this as a global scope. Okay, and outside the for loop as a global scope. Okay. Right? So the last value of 5, I was 5 and j was -1, right? So you can access it. So this is called a scope of variables. Okay. So yeah, so we have studied about variations of for loop. Okay. We have seen what is nested if. Nested if example also we have seen. So this is all about today's video. We are going to check more about increment and decrement operator in the later on video, and we will also see what is bitwise operator, what is precedence and associativity. Okay, so that is all about today's video. Thank you so much. Stay tuned, and once again please subscribe to my YouTube channel.